the others. What do you think why we have BD and ISEC? Just feel free to, yes, Michael, you can go.
We have BD to fulfill certain functions that we need to have happened that we can't necessarily do ourselves, but businesses can.
That's very true. Clear portfolios. Anyone else wants to give some insights? Amplify our opportunities and our purpose. That's really good. Support opportunities on how to generate revenues now, currently. Anyone else? Sustainable impact. You can also speak, people. Connect with ISEC with business. That's very true. Yes, Eliasa, you can go.
Yeah, so I think partners help us increase our impact like at least 100-fold. Like if you have good partners, your impact can be so great all over wherever you're working, because at ISEC we're just one organization, but if you bring more like-minded organizations, we can access so many more people.
That's very true. Since collaboration also in general is the new competition, as some wise people say. So I just put you here the impact business model, because whatever we do in BD is really connected to us. So if we have, for example, partnerships that are doing GT, GTA, GTE, then we're directly with those partnerships also create an impact and also have a purpose for to create this impact. But then on the other side, BD is also super innovative. For example, if you're running, I don't know, EVA, selling different EVA opportunities and so on in your entity, then you're also supporting youth to, for example, get in touch with ISEC. And through this, you're also creating an impact for the organization, because these will maybe, for example, be the next members, or they will more, I don't know, go on exchange during the next year and so on. So in general, BD is not just about creating revenues, but also creating revenues for a purpose that makes ISEC a bit better. So this is always something that you need to keep in mind also throughout your term, because I know the current situation is a bit challenging and we're all focusing on revenues. But in general, also keep in mind that whenever you're doing something with business development, it shouldn't just generate revenue, but it should also have a contribution to the impact of the organization, or generate revenues that you can then use in order to develop the organization. So this is something really important for you to keep in mind about business development. And now I want to give you some more insights on some technical BD things. And the first really important thing, tool that BD uses every day is the sales funnel. And you might be wondering, why do I as MCP need to know the sales funnel? Like, I will not go out there, I will not sell, my BD will do this, maybe your BD is the expert on this and so on. But why I'm telling you this is because this tool of the sales funnel and you having this knowledge of this tool will also help you in the end to support your MCVP BD in the best way possible, and to ask the right questions and check-ins and so on in order to support your MCVP BD to become better and to achieve their revenue goals. So let's go through the sales funnel in each stage. And I will just shortly explain what all these words mean. So if your BD comes to you and says, oh, yeah, I have 10 suspects, then you know, oh, what is suspects? What is my person talking about it? Yes, so the first stage of the sales funnel is really the basic stage, is actually called suspect. So suspect, if you have a company that is a general new opportunity, but you don't know if they're even interested in working with ISEC, if they even have the need. You maybe just saw them, you saw that they're maybe a multinational company that has currently operations in your entity, and that looks promising somehow because you identified how many people they have and so on. So this is the very first stage. Once you've identified those suspects, you go into the next stage, which is technically the first approach. So you're going there, or your MCVP BD is going out there and talking to someone from the company. Moving forward from this point, you go into the stage of having prospects. So prospects are actually organizations or companies that have somehow shown interest in like ISEC and working with ISEC because they like the idea, but you don't know yet if they fit. So it's also really early in the sales funnel. And then actually you go to one of the most important spaces, which is the qualified lead spaces. Or sections in the sales funnel. So when you have a qualified lead, you know that the company, first of all, has a need to work with us. They want to work with us. They have enough budget, and you also know, or your BD knows at least, on how the decision process will work in order to get the deals actually closed. In general, in this stage, not all the prospects you need to have, or all the prospects you have, need to be qualified leads. There's also for your BD the chance to disqualify companies. So for example, you see they anyways don't have budget, they cannot afford, I don't know, running GTA with us, or I don't know, attending our You Speak forum because they really have no budget available, then your BD can also disqualify them. And why this is important for you to know is those, in order for you to ask the right questions, because I know what I see sometimes, and also what my MCP, for example, did in the beginning when I was MCP BD, she was asking me mainly, okay, when will we have the contract? When will we get the revenue and so on? And that's not how BD works. Like, you can not just like go from the last part of the stage, but you need to support your MCP BD in the process of it. And also, yes, Michael, that's true. No, my MCP was actually really supportive of everything. We learned together. But yes, you need to actually understand how to ask the right questions. So for example, if you're in a check-in and you see that your MCP BD is not achieving the goals he or she set themselves, then you maybe can check like the data together with your BD and ask the right questions. So for example, if we have, I don't know, we have a lot of first approaches, but just a really, really low conversion rate to prospect. What can this mean? This can, for example, mean that we need to change the approach, or that your BD maybe has to try a new communication tool or a new communication way, or maybe rewrite the, let's say, first approach. So you can ask those questions on how you can, like, your BD can reshape it and so on. Or for example, if you're having a lot of qualified leads, you see this in the, let's say, tracking tool from your BD, but you're not really closing the deals and not really getting the revenue in, then maybe you can ask questions regarding the qualification stage. So I don't know, how do you have all the information available when you're sending proposals and so on. So this will help you for you to understand on, let's say, where is the bottleneck and how you can actually tackle it together with your MCP BD. So this is a really important tool that also is not a static thing. So it's a tool that should support your BD to achieve their goals. So if you see, for example, you plan something in your planning, you're really ambitious, for example, having ambitious conversion rates, and then throughout the months you see, no, it's actually not happening because we have different bottlenecks and so on, then it's okay for you to replan the sales funnel, because in order to achieve your goals, you need to play with this tool and adapt to this tool to the reality of your also, let's say, current state, and also to forecast like in the right way, and then also achieve your goals in the end. So as I said, it's not a static thing. Feel free also with your MCP BD, of course, to not change it every week, but maybe review it every quarter, see if it makes sense, if it still leads you to the goal in the end, and otherwise adjust it. Then the second really important thing is actually the BD timeline, because as you know, we have a timeline for all the products and so on. And yes, we also have a timeline for BD. On why we have this timeline for BD, I will get on later. But how the BD timeline looks like in general, it's just a general timeline. It doesn't count for all the companies or organizations. But you in July, August, and September, your BD should technically focus more on prospecting and doing actually the sales, qualifying leads, sending proposals, and so on. And then in October, November, they should focus more on closing the deals. Then in December, this is a really, really low month, usually in BD, because we're having the change of the year. In some entities, we're having the holiday season. And usually companies are either super busy with finishing their year, or they're already in this holiday mood and taking some part of the month also off. So it will be really, really hard to close also in December deals. And also regarding the budgeting, because most of the companies, they don't decide in December on how much budget they have for example, employer branding during next year. But this happens actually already in October mainly. And therefore you also should be ahead of this timeline and not get let your BD get into this December with all the sales closing, but be faster. And then in general, January, it's more about planning again, because also companies, they're usually just coming back and so on, and we can really use this chance to like replan and plan the sales peak. And then in February, March, and April, you go again in prospecting and sales. May is mainly sales closing, and then June is planning. Why I included also the plan in June is that in general, BD, if you've done BD, it is not something you can do in like 1 week or something. It's really important for you to also think of how can I, like my MCVP BD at the end of the term, build a timeline for the next generation. Because in BD, we should always think like 1 or 2 terms also ahead in order to not miss out on companies. Because I mean, if you've worked with companies, some companies are slower, some companies need more time also for regarding decision making and so on. So it's really important that we also there don't stop in the end of our term, but also go forward and build a pipeline for the next term. And why I said in the beginning, this is just a general timeline, is that it's really depending on when companies are actually deciding on their budget, because you need to be ahead of this timeline to sell to them, to then come in the moment when they're actually deciding, okay, I want to spend like, I don't know, 10K on, I don't know, employer branding next year. And yes, Isaac is there and they have a really good offer. I will go with Isaac, you know? But it really depends on which like sector you are, how you're, I don't know, like which kind of companies you're approaching and so on. So this is just a general timeline, and for sure you need to, or like your BD always needs to check out on also who is, let's say, the target in the B2B area there, and how is their timeline. Because in the end, it doesn't bring us any benefits if we're just working for our own timeline, but we always need to have the company timeline in mind. Otherwise, we are not being super successful. And then the second hint regarding the BD timeline, sales and so on is an all-year thing, and we cannot, you know, I don't know if, for example, in the end of September, we're moving with all the companies to sales closing. This for sure will not happen. So, for example, if your BD has like some leads still to qualify in October that looked really promising because you already have the first information and so on, then it's also, for example, okay if they just start the closing in November and so on. So it's nothing super definite, but it should be also a continuous process. Yes, so this is about BD timeline. And then I have some tips or some things for you to keep in mind when working with your MCVP BD and also when having BD in your entity. So the first thing is, as I said also earlier, is that you always need to have the business timeline in mind and always need to be 1 step ahead, because companies have their time when they set their budget. You need to be ahead and start approaching them before they actually, define budget and so on. And then also it's super important to think long-term in BD and also make sure that your MCVPs think long-term and not just for the term, like for their own, let's say, success of their term. Then the second thing is, which is a bit different from what we usually do in ISAC, but in BD we have a B2B approach, and it might be news to some of you because, for example, if you haven't had a BD on local level or something like this, you maybe haven't worked so much with companies and having this, let's say, B2B approach in your mind. In general, it's really important here that you as MCP, but also your MCVP BD, of course, understand what is the, let's say, pains of companies, how can we relieve their pains, how can we like give them some gains or some benefits from our things that we're offering them. And you need to like in BD, you need to have this gap between the youth and what also the stakeholders, the companies, the organizations, the NGOs wants. So it's really, you need to think in both ways. You need to think for the youth and for the customer. You also need to think from the business perspective, which is sometimes not so easy, because to the customer usually we can create like more easily because they're most probably our own age, they're most probably in the same stage. But for BD, you really need to understand on what is driving companies and what they're working. And sorry for my animation, it's on fleek here. Yeah, so the third thing is actually to evaluate also your current partners, especially when you go into planning. It's really important for you to see how your current partners are, because it's great if you, for example, from the previous term have more partners or have still partners, but in general, you also need to evaluate how much are these partners contributing to the BD budget, and then also make sure that your MCVP BD allocates the time and the capacities depending on also how much revenue they generate. So for example, we might have pool partnerships that don't bring us any revenue, but then also your BD shouldn't focus 100% of their time in supporting those and managing those companies. So just make sure that you're together with your MCVP BD also evaluating those things, and that they're also doing this in their planning preparation to, in general, also then forecast revenues and so on in order to, then also know what comes in the future. Then the fourth thing is actually to keep the balance, because if you have accounts, and it's always easier to focus just on the account management, because partners, they are sometimes needy and they sometimes need more, let's say, attention. But in general, it's really important that you keep this balance between account management and also new sales strategy, that you're not just focusing, or your BD doesn't focus on one of them, but actually on both. And then to also remember there in general that new sales initiatives can also become part of accounts during the year and during the term, and can move from one thing to another. Yes. Then the fifth thing is actually synergies, because now that we're also focusing more on BD, and we're talking a lot more about BD, you also need to know, or as MCP, you need to support this, that BD cannot work without synergies. Like literally, we can sell things, but if we are not synergizing with the right departments, for example, marketing, EVA, finance, GT, then most probably we'll also be not successful, because if we're selling something that we cannot deliver, of course, this is not good for the image, and also not good for future revenues, because most probably then companies or organizations won't work with us. So there it's important for you as MCP also to take care that those synergy spaces are happening in order to really successfully deliver BD initiatives. Yeah, and really these synergies depend on how, like, what is the BD initiatives you run in your entity. So some of your MCVP BDs might have a closer synergy with marketing, because you're having a lot of digital campaigns and so on. But then, for example, in some entities, it might be also the case that the synergy with GT is the biggest synergy, because you're running a lot of, I don't know, IGA, for example. Yes. Then sixth point is actually for you to consider and to keep in mind that BD is not a one-job person, as I also said with synergies. And there is, yeah, like we cannot deliver it by ourselves. And also, for example, if you're thinking of the structure, and also in planning, when you're thinking of the projects, also make sure that you have the right HR investments and also tools for those things. So for example, if your BD plans 10 events that are having the size of like a huge youth speak forum or whatever, and then make sure that also the BD has the support in those, especially HR terms, because the more effort BDs put, for example, in event management, the less they will also be able to sell, and the less successful also the events will be, because the BDs don't have time to sell. So this is just one reminder to keep in mind. And then the last thing is actually to stay up to date from your side and support your BD, because in the end, it's also your responsibility to stay up to the current trends, what's going on in the entity, how's the economy doing, which, like, you know, these latest business trends, it's always important for you to also be aware of this, to also understand and support, and also challenge your MCVP BD there. And then in general, the support is one of the greatest things, because as I said earlier, in the beginning, my MCP, for example, didn't ask the right questions, but then we learned together, and it was one of the greatest gifts I had in my MCVP term, that she actually was supporting me with so many things, with synergies and so on, with, like, I don't know, coming to events, because she just had a different, like, representation, or came to me with, to some, like, say, crucial meetings of huge partnerships, where she, or like in my case, she had this just like this standing of being the MCP and being there. It for sure helped. So I also can just suggest you to also support your MCVP BDs in this case. And then also regarding the general awareness in the MC of why BD is important, why, for example, other MC members have to come to this event because the partner is paying for it. So there it's also really important that you as MCP also support your MCVP BD there in order to be successful. Yes, so those are the main things I want you to keep in mind, and to always go back and remember during also your, let's say, you will have stress moments in your MCP term, and then it's important to always go back and to also see how we can actually support the MCVP BDs. Yes, but in general, all the learnings will be different. You might have worked already with BD. BD in your entity might be super developed or might be super new. So all the like learnings you're doing in your MCP term, also together with your MCVP BD, will be super different from entity to entity. But in general, yeah, I mean, you have this commission, you're there, and you can also always, of course, exchange your thoughts. Yes, but anyways, since we have like 3 more minutes before we move to the second part of the session, I wanted to give the floor to you. If you have any questions about BD basics, you want to get some insights, feel free to ask me now, but of course also after the session. Yes, I'm happy to answer your questions. So if you have something, just write in the chat your name again, and then you can just unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, Wani. I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so you said that ideally business could incorporate ISEC into their planning for the fiscal year. So you should be selling, if your fiscal year starts and ends around July, you sell around March, April, May, so they can do that, right? I'm having a lot of trouble with that in my entity, and I'm not sure why. Do you think there's a COVID-related shock insofar as the kind of insecurity of the future that people are more hesitant, or do you think we need to be more vocal, like explicitly say the words, I want us to be included in your next budget or something like that?
I think it can have, to be honest, a lot of different factors because first of all, we're always like, I don't know how it's in your ISEC entities, but for me, it was always like this reason or excuse. I for sure think that COVID had an impact on companies and also how much they're spending on different initiatives, especially employer branding, because most probably it's not one of the, let's say, first things they invest. But this, of course, also depends on how hard COVID hit your country and so on. And then also the second thing is what can be also the reason is in general, how you approach the companies and how your first approach was, how adapted it was maybe. And then the third thing can be also looking at the different sectors and really they're staying up to date. To just focus on the sectors that were doing well with COVID or like at least okayish, and to also see there on what you're focusing on. So it can have a lot of different, let's say, like factors that could influence it. I think there I would just suggest you to go through all the, let's say, for example, your sales funnel, your timeline, and then just to check where can the bottleneck be? Because also regarding timeline and fiscal year, I would suggest to look at, of course, our fiscal year, but also look at like, those holiday seasons, because I don't know how it was in your MCBPBD term, but in general, like for example, December was for me at that month when I was MCVPBD, and you need to have those big holidays also in your entities in mind. So if you're, for example, having this huge holiday where everyone will be on vacation in September, then maybe also shift your timeline around it so you close before, for example. And so those are really, the things I can say about it. Nice. Any other questions?
Hi, Monique. I just typed one question in the chat box. One very quick question that is actually related to what Michael asked. Do we have some like industrial KM, like different business timeline from different type of companies from AI or RO side? So maybe we can customize or just take a reference for us to, raise more GEP, GMP, this kind of stuff.
No. So the only timeline that we can give you is this general timeline, because it really depends on like the sector you're approaching. This is, let's say, the general timeline, and also normal like salespeople outside of ISEC are working for usually, because it includes like the main seasons of summer being the break for most of the people, change of the year, busy season for all the companies and so on. And I would really suggest to work with this general timeline, but then also see what your customers are. I know that, for example, consulting companies have a super different timeline most of the time than other companies. So if you're focusing specifically on those, then just make sure to check it out. And for example, if you have alumni in this branch, or if you're having long-term partners, then just ask those questions. Like your BD can talk to them and can find out this timeline and then adjust it. But I would suggest from, let's say, what we can give you as recommendation is this general timeline.
Yeah, thank you. Got it.
Perfect. Amazing. Then I see more people already joining. If we have let's see, check it. Yeah. EVA current and new initiatives require support from companies. How MCPs should go about planning for partnerships for both BD and EVA, and how MCPs can ensure synergy between BD and EVA. To answer first the last question, how the synergy can be made. I mean, it's in general how you support also other synergies, or how you ensure other synergies. Make sure that they have a routine, make sure that they have clear objectives of their routine, so what they want to talk about in synergy spaces and so on. And then also have clear, let's say, KPIs if the synergy somehow work out, or if it needs to be improved. So this is mainly the thing on how we can ensure from your side the initiatives. And then into planning for partnerships with BD and EVA together, I would just suggest that you always have a space where it's first both of them together, where they see, okay, what are the initiatives, for example, we want to run, and then both of them plan, let's say, more individually. For example, how BD can do the sales, how Eva will do delivery and so on. And then in the end, come together again and see if it matches. I think this would be, let's say, my suggested flow to have like this alignment, but at the same time, also each of them plans out based on their strengths. I hope this answered. Amazing. Then if there's more questions, we can also take the time in the end, but I saw more MCPBDs joining and also finances. So I actually wanted to go to the second part of the session, which is about the different stakeholders, because we also have now different people in this call. We have the MCPs, you're more of the organizational direction, strategy, external relevance, and general financial sustainability of your entities, synergy of the team, and so on. Then we have finance, more on the budget management side, investments, how we can, how's the revenues and cash flow management, how do we manage all the legal things and so on. And then we have the MCVPBD here, who's also like, I don't know, more focusing on sales funnel, sales strategy, revenues, new sales, account management, and so on. And it's really important that we bring those three stakeholders together, because it's one of the most important synergies in your entity in order to ensure for sure this alignment and also accountability. So the pause we will skip. So we're directly jumping into the Power Corner. And actually I wanted to ask you, who of you has heard about the Power Corner and who of you knows what it is? And you can again just unmute yourself and share a bit. And if you haven't heard of it, you can also just write in the chat. No clue, it's totally fine. I mean, that's why we're here, to clarify it.
I think from what I've heard about it, Moni, it's the MCP, the MCVPFN, and the MCVPBD synergy together. And the meetings they have, that's called the Power Corner, right?
That's very true. That's really, really true. And also I gave you this hint with the three pictures here in AI. So here it's the PAI. It's of course the AIVP Finance, AIVP BD, who are like coming together for the Power Corner. So yes, I wanted to zoom a bit in on what the Power Corner is and why those three people are actually meeting, as you said. So the first thing is why we're having a Power Corner is to ensure collaboration, because this synergy between those three key people is really important to monitor, first of all, the financial performance of your entity, the sustainability, and also look more on a B2B angle on how we're doing. So this is, let's say, the first reason. The second reason why we have this Power Corner is to ensure accountability, because how can you make sure that your entity is financial if you're having from none of the sides like really the final accountability of monitor like cash flows and so on, be transparent with their finances, legality, be the performance, budget and contribution and so on? How can you make sure that everyone is aware of those stages and also accountable to like take care of the areas in order to ensure the financial sustainability? Then the third thing is actually about decision making, because you're having there three really important people together regarding investments, partner issues, what if we have a brand crisis, what if there's something about safety, legalities, entity sustainability, then you have all the three, let's say, main people together in order to take decisions regarding those things. Of course, it also involves other people. For example, if you're having a brand crisis and also you're having a PR responsible or whatever, then of course also including this, but those, let's say, are the main key people that can take decisions based on those topics. And the fourth thing is actually to identify risks and monitor them. Because when you're having those three people together, you're having the different views on the different sides. And this enables you to monitor which risks we have with all the stakeholders, and how can we mitigate those risks? What is our plan ahead? And like, what's the next steps in this in order to make sure that our entity, like, you know, is risk-free. So let's say those are the most important things and why we have the Power Corner and why it's important for you to also hold the Power Corner regularly. So yes, to go more into it, like how this Power Corner works, what you should prepare, which cadency and so on, I just wanted to give you some general insights. So in general, I would recommend, and also that's what we're doing on AI, is to have bi-weekly Power Corner meetings with all the three, let's say, stakeholders. If you, for example, want to have with your BD and your finance, because it's more on the operational side or something like this, weekly meetings, then that's what you're also doing in AI. So we're having weekly meetings between finance and yeah, BD, or also with check-ins, with maybe you as MCP want to have weekly check-ins with your BD, then it's okay to also have those synergies, and it's also really important. But then to at least have bi-weekly this power corner for you, in order to also achieve all the previous things I mentioned to you regarding collaboration and accountability, risk mitigation, and so on. Yes, so what you do before the power corner, and I would really, really suggest you to stick to this, is that every stakeholder in the power corner needs to collect and prepare the key information, such as debtor tracking, BD goal achievement, status of accounts, new sales. Why this is so important, and why it's important for you to also fill all this information ideally in a tool that you all have together, is that everyone can read it before and think of questions. Because like in the end, if you're just hearing a reporting, and if you're not in maybe auditive type, then you might need some time to think about it and so on. And it's really important that you have all this information ready before, everyone's prepared, you can read and then also use the time in the power corner efficiently. And I would also suggest you, if one of the stakeholders isn't prepared for the power corner, to rather move it, because it doesn't bring you anything if you don't have the data and if you don't have the key information prepared. And it's most of the time not information that is on top of your mind, which you can just, you know, get from your mind and just then move into the conversation. So just make sure that you have all those things always prepared, and also there to keep each other accountable, and to also read it before. And so you're then using the space in the best way. And then in the space itself, it's really important that you balance the things between presentation and also questions that you're having, that you keep each other accountable on, and also to capitalize on what you're good in. So what is your strength? What is maybe the first things you think of? Maybe as an, I don't know, MCVP Finance, you're really analytical profile. It's like easier for you to, I don't know, draw conclusions from the BD goal achievement to the entity financial sustainability and so on. So there it's really important that you're also playing on your strengths and your JDs. And then that you really register all the different tasks and call to actions. So you're actually taking something out of the power corner itself. Yes, to move in the power corner itself, I also wanted to prepare you like a, let's say, draft agenda. Of course, you don't have to go through it in the same flow, but those are from our side, the most important like recommendations on what to cover in the power corner. So the first thing is, of course, a check-in. As everything, you need to sense how everyone's doing. Then it's really important that you track the progress of your debts, because I don't know how it is in your entities, but sometimes in ISAC we send out invoices, but then we're like, I don't know, noticing 1 year later, the MCVPs before and the MCPs before, they didn't track this, and we're still having an outstanding amount from a company. And it's really hard for this or for you to get like this amount 1 or 2 years later or something. So just make sure to always on a regular basis also track the debt, because in the end we need the money in the bank and not the, let's say, thinking of the money that we might have. So this is one thing. The second thing is the BD goal achievement. Of course, since this directly contributes to the financial sustainability, and also they're connected to this, we need to track new sales, because this will like help you to forecast what's coming and how we can like achieve the revenue goal also in the next month. Then another thing is the state of the accounts, because those are also delivering you revenues, that is really important. So you need to also see if there's any, you know, things that are not going well, where we might have the risk to lose revenue and so on. So that's really important that we talk about this. And then in general, if there's any other business, like, I don't know, auditing, visa, legalities, and so on, this should be also covered in the power corner, because all the 3 stakeholders, you need to be aware of those things. Yes, so those are, let's say, the main insights I can give you on what I would suggest, or what we would suggest as an agenda. Of course, if you have more things that you want to talk about based on your entity's context, also feel free. Just make sure to include those main things. Yes, and why we also invited everyone here is actually because we want to have your first conversations about Power Corner, and to start already looking into this before your term officially starts. So I will put you in breakout rooms. We have breakout rooms with the names of your entities. If your MCVP Finance or any one of the Power Corner is not there, feel also free to like get together with other MCPs to talk about the 3 questions that I actually have for you. So the first thing is, how is your Power Corner synergy currently implemented in your entity? Like, is it a common procedure that your entity has been doing during the last year and so on, to talk about this, how it's currently implemented? Then what are key questions for the Power Corner transition, let's say, so between the last term and also between this term, what are the most important questions that we need to solve? And then the third thing is actually, what are the key conversations you will need to have before planning in order to then use this information for planning and then also move forward. So those are the three questions I want you to think of. And I just saw that Tony also wrote it in your group. So I will, or like, you can now go into the breakout rooms with your entity and have 7 minutes to talk about those topics. And then you can come back and I want to hear some shares. So I'll see you in 7 minutes again. Your mind throughout planning and throughout your term. So if someone wants to share, I would be really happy to hear you. Oh God, Tony, no, please, you don't want to hear this. The Power Corner song, powered by Moni. Just kidding. Yeah, okay, who wants to share? I see some nominations here.
Okay, I'll share. Okay, so I had a breakout room with Ali and Michael. Though we're from different entities technically. But yeah, we were able to discuss how we do our Power Corner meeting, like us bi-weekly, but for the rest, sometimes they integrate it during their MCMs because they want to involve also the other VPs. But nonetheless, something that we really want to, I think, give or have more clarity on really is like how we should timeline or align our timeline with the partners and really maximizing like the window, like how are we going to maximize that window wherein they can allow us to really partner with them. And also, all right, yeah, those are like basically our key conversations, more on alignment and more on those stuff and how to further improve and strengthen the Power Corner moving forward. Yeah, that's really it for us.
Thank you so much for sharing. Also regarding timeline, one tip that I can give to you, if you're like, I don't know, if BD in your entity was in general like established since a few years, also make sure to just look at previous data on how the timeline was and then see did it work out, it didn't work out and so on, to not lose time. Of course, if you're just starting BD, it's more of a trial and error. But also, yeah, feel free to share also within your commissions on what you've learned, so the others can also learn from your learnings. Any other sharings, any other insights?
Yeah, so we had a very productive space as well. We sort of discussed how the Power Corner functioned last year, and what are the key strategies we should keep in place in case different scenarios occur, because every month is going to be different from what we had originally planned. And if a month doesn't go according to the plan, then what are the mitigation strategies that we can put into place so that our term is still pretty efficient? So yeah, it was pretty productive, and I'm looking forward to be a part of Power Corner meeting in the future.
Amazing. Here I can say it, but don't say it to other MCVPs. Power Corner is really cool. I would love to be part of Power Corner again. Nice, cool. I hope you all others that didn't share now also had amazing conversations, also can take something forward and keep also something in mind for your planning. And with this, I just want to wrap up. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to the animations, by the way, but I just want to wrap up the most important facts about Power Corner and why it's important that you stick with it, have it as a routine throughout your whole term, even in challenging times or in stressful times, because it's really important in order for you to collaborate between all the three stakeholders, be accountable to the general financial sustainability of your entity, and also regarding each of the JDs, then to take the decisions that you need to make, and then to identify risks and also monitor them. And with this, we're at the end of our session. I hope you had some insights. We have now 4 more minutes or 3 more minutes in the session. So if you have any questions, feel free to also ask them. If you are good for now, questions might appear later, also feel free to reach out to me. I mean, you can find my contact on the global contact list. And then I wish you a great rest of RPM. And for the VDs and finances here, I wish you a great weekend. Amazing. Okay, dokie. Anyone has questions? If not, you can just type out in the chat or clear, and then we can all take a break. Yeah. I see some thumbs up here. Perfect. Amazing. Then good luck with your Power Corner. Good luck as MCPs supporting your MCP VDs. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you all again, and enjoy RPM. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Moni, for the session and joining us from all the way from Germany in very early morning. All the best.
That's what we love about Isaac, no?